Welcome, everyone, to this deep dive, I guess you could say, into Mao's.
Mao.
Art Spiegelman's graphic novel.
Yes.
A Pulitzer Prize winner.
Yes.
All about Vladek Spiegelman.
A Holocaust survivor.
Right.
Told through the lens of his son.
His son, Art.
Yes.
And what's really interesting about this is it's told through a comic book.
Yes, a graphic novel.
With Jews depicted as mice.
And Nazis as cats.
So ready to dive in.
I am ready when you are.
Yeah.
Maros really unfolds on two different levels. You have Art interviewing his father.
In the present day.
Yes, in the 1970s.
Right.
But then we are taken back in time to see Vladek's life before and during the war.
Then that's kind of what makes it so interesting, right? This is kind of back and forth.
Yeah.
So let's start in pre-war Poland.
Okay.
What was Vladek's life like before Nazism kind of took over?
Well, in the 1930s, Vladek was living a pretty successful life. He was a textile businessman. He was married to Anja Zilberberg.
Who came from a wealthy family.
Yes, and they had a son, Rishu. But even in these early chapters, Spiegelman is already kind of hinting at challenges to come.
Right, like Anja's postpartum depression.
Yes.
And the fact that Vladek was a prisoner of war when he was in the Polish army.
Right. Not the idyllic family life, you imagine?
Not at all.
No.
So then, of course, we have the looming threat
Yeah.
of the Nazi regime.
Yeah, and so we see, as we move through the book, the rise of anti-Semitism. In Poland, restrictions tighten, food becomes scarce. Vladek, who's ever resourceful, turns to the black market just to try and make ends meet.
And this is where those animal depictions, I think, become really, really powerful.
Yes.
You know, seeing the mice
Yeah.
huddled and scared, trying to just navigate this world that's increasingly hostile. Do you think this makes the Holocaust more accessible? Or does it risk trivializing it?
I think that's a question that's been debated for years.
Yeah.
And there's no easy answer.
Right.
I think, for me personally, the imagery allows for an emotional distance,
Okay.
which can paradoxically make the events even more impactful. It's like a way to engage with the story without being overwhelmed by the brutality.
I see.
And Spiegelman himself actually addresses this within the narrative.
Yeah.
As Art grapples with representing such a traumatic history.
And he doesn't shy away from the kind of moral ambiguities of the time.
No, not at all.
Like, for example, when Vladek's friends are executed
Yes.
for trading goods.
Right. You're forced to confront.
The impossible choices
Yeah.
that people had to make.
Absolutely. It wasn't always black and white.
Yeah.
Right and wrong.
Especially when survival's at stake.
Yeah. As things get worse, Vladek gets this order to report to the stadium for document verification.
Yeah.
It's a pivotal moment in the story, full of suspense, and you just don't know what's going to happen.
This is where his resourcefulness really comes in.
Yeah.
His cousin is working at the stadium.
Right.
Is able to get Vladek, Anja, and her parents released.
Yes.
But it's bittersweet.
It is, because it comes at a cost.
Right.
His sister.
And her children.
And his father.
Weren't so lucky.
Weren't so lucky.
Taken away. And their fate is unknown.
Unknown.
Just underscores, that arbitrary nature
Yes.
of survival during the Holocaust.
And the loss.
And the loss.
That permeates the book.
And then they make the decision to send their son, Rishu, to live with Anja's sister.
Tosha.
To protect him.
It's this act of desperate love that leads to one of the most devastating moments.
In the book.
In Matz's. Tosha decides to poison herself, her children,
And Rishu.
rather than face the horrors of the camps.
Just unimaginable despair.
Unimaginable.
Really?
Yeah.
So with their son gone,
Right.
Vladek and Anja are alone, facing an increasingly dangerous world. So where do they go from here?
Well, they realize that the ghetto they're in is being liquidated.
Oh, no.
And they make the decision to go into hiding.
Oh.
It's constant fear.
Yeah.
Uncertainty.
Always looking over their shoulder.
They're moving from one hiding place to another, relying on the kindness of strangers.
They even try to escape to Hungary.
Yes, with smugglers.
But they're betrayed
They are.
and handed over to the Germans.
It's just one agonizing setback after another.
And ultimately leads to their arrival.
At the concentration camps.
At the concentration camps. Vladek is sent to Auschwitz.
And Anja to Birkenau.
This is the beginning of, I think, the darkest chapter
Yes.
in their story. Before we go there, though,
Yeah.
you mentioned Art wrestles with the complexities of representing his father's story.
He does. So in one of the most poignant chapters, Art includes a comic that he created called Prisoner on the Hell Planet.
Okay.
And it depicts his own emotional breakdown. after his mother's suicide
Wow.
and the pressure that he feels in coming to terms with her legacy and his father's experiences.
It's like a story within a story.
It is.
And it adds this whole other layer to their relationship.
Yeah.
Highlights Art's own trauma.
His struggle to understand.
His parents.
His parents, yeah.
And the responsibility that he feels.
And that responsibility.
In telling the story.
Yeah, and this is made even more complex by the fact that Vladek destroyed Anja's post-war diaries, which contained her own account of the Holocaust.
Wow.
So it raises all these questions about memory, control, and how you reconcile these different perspectives.
It's just a reminder that even within families,
Yeah.
there can be vastly different experiences and interpretations
Yes.
of the same events.
Especially when it's trauma.
Especially when it's something as profound as the Holocaust.
Right. And it just underscores the challenges Art faces as he tries to piece together his parents' story
Yeah.
and grapple with his feelings towards his father.
Yeah.
But for now, let's return to Vladek,
Oh.
whose arrival at Auschwitz really is a turning point.
In the book.
In Mouse.
In the narrative structure.
Yes.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay.
Auschwitz is where his survival skills are really put to the test. We see this whole other side of Vladek emerge.
Yeah.
But it's also a shift
Yes.
in his relationship with art.
Right.
Because the past and the present start to collide in a really powerful way.
Yes.
So we'll unpack all that and more
Yes, we will.
when we return.
You're right. It really does become a turning point. Auschwitz does, I mean, it's not just the setting in Mouse. It's like it becomes this character itself.
Almost like this monstrous entity
Yeah.
that both defines
It diminishes.
and diminishes the lives within its grasp.
Absolutely.
And this is where we see Vladek's survival instincts
Right.
really kick in.
Yes.
He's not just enduring, he's actively like scheming trading,
Hmm.
using his knowledge of languages and that business acumen that he had before the war
Yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it?
to carve out some kind of sliver of advantage in this just awful system.
Yeah. The skills that once, meant success in a capitalist world, resourcefulness, seeing an opportunity,
Yeah.
become the tools of survival.
Exactly.
He learns to fix shoes. He's a tinsmith. He barters for extra rations. I mean, he even uses his charm
Yeah.
to become an English tutor for a capo.
But it kind of begs the question, though.
Yeah.
Does this force us to reevaluate like what we think of as good and bad victims?
Right.
Is Vladek's survival somehow less admirable because he relied on traits
Right.
that we typically associate with the system that enabled the Holocaust?
Well, I think that's the brilliance of Spiegelman's work.
Yeah.
He doesn't offer any easy answers or moral judgments.
Right.
He gives us a flawed character
Yeah.
who is shaped by trauma
Right.
and driven by this need to survive no matter what.
Yeah.
And by doing so, I think he forces us to confront our own preconceived notions about heroism and resilience
Yeah.
when faced with something so evil.
And even in the midst of all of this, systematic dehumanization, Vladek's constantly calculating,
Yeah.
strategizing, looking for an angle.
Yeah.
I mean, was that single-mindedness
Right.
essential to his survival, or did it
prevent him
prevent him from connecting
from connecting? Yeah.
with others, even his own son later on?
Oh, and that's a great point. And that's something that Art really struggles with
Yeah.
throughout Maoist. How much of Vladek's behavior is because of the war
Yeah.
and how much is just Vladek?
Yeah.
There's no easy answer to that.
No.
And it adds this whole other layer of complexity to their relationship.
And speaking of the relationship, Auschwitz is also where Vladek and Anja are reunited,
It is.
albeit under just the most horrific of circumstances.
Yes.
He learns that she's in Birkenau,
Right.
and through a combination of luck, skill, and maybe some divine intervention,
Who knows?
manages to get her transferred to his camp,
Yeah, what a testament to their love and their determination to stay together.
even when faced with, hell itself.
I know, it's amazing. It's this little flicker of light in all this darkness.
Right.
A reminder that even amidst all this brutality, there were still moments of human connection
Yeah.
and resilience.
But their ordeal isn't over.
It's not over.
As the Russian army approaches, they're forced on a death march
Yeah.
to Gross Rosen, another camp,
Right, another camp.
and then ultimately to Dachau.
And during this evacuation,
And during this evacuation,
Vladek contracts typhus,
oh no,
a deadly disease.
that ravaged the camps.
Yes. And once again, we see that determination
To survive.
to survive even when his body is failing.
Yeah.
He's liberated by American soldiers while still so sick.
Just amazing.
I know a testament to his will to live.
It's almost like he refused to die until he knew Anja was safe.
Yes, and their reunion after the war.
It's just amazing.
It's a reminder that even the darkest of chapters can have a glimmer of hope.
But the story doesn't end there.
It doesn't.
You know, Masses isn't just about surviving the Holocaust. It's about living
with the aftermath.
with the aftermath, with the memories and the scars.
Those scars that never fully heal.
Exactly. So the post-war chapters, I think, are just as compelling.
I agree. They really are.
Vladek and Anja immigrate to America.
Trying to build a new life.
They have another son, Art.
Yeah.
But the shadows of the past,
Linger.
they linger. Vladek's trauma kind of manifests in ways that are heartbreaking.
Right.
And sometimes frustrating.
Yeah.
He's frugal.
To the point of obsession. Yeah.
To the point of obsession, he's distrustful.
Prone to outbursts. Yeah.
And I think this is where the tension in their relationship
Really comes to light.
really comes to the forefront.
Yeah.
You know, Art, burdened by his parents' past, just struggles to understand
His father.
to reconcile the man he knows
Right.
with the man who survived this unimaginable horror.
And Vladek struggles to connect with his son.
Yeah.
You know, maybe he's not able to fully articulate the depths of his trauma, or maybe he doesn't want to burden Art with it.
And this is really at the heart of Menace.
Yeah, it really is.
It's a story about intergenerational trauma,
Yes.
about the ways the past shakes the present.
And the challenges of communication and understanding.
When faced with this level of suffering,
Absolutely. And their interactions.
it's so strange.
Yeah, filled with misunderstandings and resentment.
Yeah, and then there's that moment
Violent.
when Vladek, in a moment of confusion, calls Art Rishu,
Yeah.
the son he lost during the war.
It's heartbreaking.
It's like a punch to the gut,
It is.
a reminder that the past is never truly past,
Yeah,
that the ghosts of trauma linger.
they do.
So as we come to the end of our deep dive into Maoist, I mean, what are we left with?
Well, we've journeyed through Vladek's experiences. We've seen his resilience, his flaws, and explored this really complex relationship with his son.
Yeah, what lasting impressions does this story leave on you?
I think for me, Maoist is a testament to the power of storytelling.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to bearing witness to such a monumental tragedy.
Yeah.
I mean, Spiegelman's choice to use the graphic novel format with its illustrations and characters creates this really unique and unforgettable reading experience.
It really does.
It's a story that stays with you.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really is amazing how it manages to be so personal, but also, you know, universal.
Yeah.
It's one family story,
Right.
but it just says so much about, like, the human condition
Yeah, our capacity for love.
and cruelty.
And cruelty, exactly.
And it really forces us to confront these uncomfortable truths
Yeah.
about the Holocaust,
About ourselves, yeah.
about how trauma
It's just echo through generations.
through generations,
And how hard it is to reconcile.
these different versions of the past.
Absolutely.
And we've talked a lot about the format
Yeah.
and the animal imagery.
Right.
But I think for me, what's so powerful about Maoist
Is the honesty.
is the honesty, yeah.
Yeah.
Spiegelman doesn't shy away from his father's flaws,
Right.
his anger, his stinginess,
Yeah.
his inability to connect with art.
Yeah, he could have easily just, created this sanitized version of Vladek,
Yeah.
the heroic survivor that overcomes everything.
Yeah.
But that's not the story he chose to tell.
And I think by doing that, he created this much more
Nuanced
and human
yeah.
portrait of a Holocaust survivor.
It really challenges that idea that there's a right way
To be a victim.
to be a victim, a right way to survive, a right way to cope.
And it's in those imperfections
Yeah.
that I think we see the true cost
The true cost, yeah.
of the Holocaust.
Not just the lives that were lost.
But psychic wounds
Those wounds that lingered.
that lingered.
For so long.
It's not just a story about the past
No, it's about the legacy of that trauma,
and the challenge of healing.
individually and collectively.
And this is a story that I think continues to resonate today.
Yeah, as we deal with issues of prejudice and intolerance and human rights.
It's a reminder that the Holocaust wasn't just this isolated event.
Right, it was the culmination of centuries of anti-Semitism
Yeah.
and a chilling example of what can happen when hate and indifference are allowed to grow.
So as we kind of wrap up our deep dives here into Maoist,
Yeah.
I want to leave our listeners with this question.
Okay.
How can we apply the lessons of this story to our own lives
How can we be more vigilant?
in recognizing and confronting injustice?
In all its forms. Yeah.
How do we cultivate empathy and understanding in a world that feels increasingly divided?
Such powerful question.
I know.
I think Maoist gives us a way to start thinking about these things.
Yeah.
It challenges us to listen to the stories of others,
Right.
to bear witness to their experiences, and to honor their memories,
Even when those stories are difficult to hear.
even when they're hard.
It's a story that reminds us about empathy, about understanding and remembering.
Yeah, and it stayed with me.
It stayed with me for so long.
And I hope it stays with you too.
If you haven't already, you really should seek out Maoist.
And experience it for yourself.
It's a journey worth taking. And as we conclude,
Let me just add that while the Holocaust is a story of immense suffering, it's also a story of resilience,
of courage.
of courage of the human spirit.
And Maoist really captures all of that. So thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into Synopsis.
Thank you.
We'll be back next time with another fascinating topic to explore.
Sounds great.
Until then, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going.